There is a quiet kind of exhaustion that most people carry but rarely talk about. It is not the exhaustion of physical labor, though your body may feel heavy. It is not the exhaustion of a single bad day, though your days may feel long. It is something deeper. Something that lives beneath the surface of your routine, beneath your smile, beneath the way you tell people you are fine when they ask how you are doing. It is the exhaustion of a mind that never rests. You wake up in the morning, and before your feet even touch the floor, your thoughts are already racing. You are thinking about what you need to do, what you forgot to do, what someone said to you yesterday that still does not sit right, what might go wrong today, what you should have handled differently last week. Your body is still, but your mind is already running. And it will not stop running for the rest of the day. You move through your hours answering messages, meeting expectations, absorbing other people's emotions, reacting to news, solving problems that are not yours, worrying about things that have not happened yet, and replaying things that already have. By the time you sit down at night, you are not at peace. You are simply out of energy, and there is a difference, a significant one. Peace is not what happens when you collapse at the end of the day. Peace is not the absence of tasks. Peace is not a vacation, a quiet room, or a moment alone, though all of those things can help. Peace is a state of mind. It is an internal experience, and for most people, it feels incredibly rare. You might think that peace is something you have to find, that it exists somewhere outside of you, waiting to be discovered. That if you just get the right job, the right relationship, the right amount of money, the right situation, then peace will finally arrive. But that is not how peace works. Peace is not something you chase. It is not something you earn. And it is certainly not something that shows up once everything in your life is perfect, because nothing in your life will ever be perfectly aligned at the same time. That is not how life operates. The truth is, peace is something you protect. It is something you cultivate by becoming deeply aware of what disrupts it. And most of the time, the things that disrupt your peace are not dramatic. They are not catastrophic events or obvious enemies. They are subtle. They are habitual. They are woven so deeply into the fabric of your daily life that you do not even recognize them as threats. They are the conversations that drain you, the commitments you never wanted to make, the thoughts you replay without resolution, the noise you absorb without questioning, the patterns you follow because they are familiar, not because they serve you. Peace does not leave your life all at once. It leaks out slowly, through 1,000 small cracks you never thought to seal. And the reason most people feel so far from peace is not because they are doing too little. It is because they are tolerating too much. This is what we are going to explore together. Not how to add more to your life in the hope of feeling better, but how to remove what is quietly stealing your calm. How to look honestly at the habits, the influences, the patterns, and the beliefs that keep your mind in a state of constant agitation. And how to begin, gently and intentionally, to let them go. Because the life you want, the clarity you crave, the calmness you imagine other people must have, it is not on the other side of doing more. It is on the other side of allowing less noise, less obligation that does not align with your values, less emotional weight that does not belong to you, less of what disturbs and more of what restores. This is not about building walls. It is not about becoming cold or distant or detached from the world. It is about becoming honest about what you need, honest about what you can carry, honest about what is helping you grow and what is simply wearing you down, and then making choices, real choices, based on that honesty. So if you are tired of feeling mentally overwhelmed, if you are exhausted by the weight of everything you carry, if you have been searching for peace and wondering why it always seems just out of reach, I want you to consider the possibility that peace has been available to you all along. You have simply been too buried under things that do not serve you to feel it. Let us begin to uncover it, not by adding anything new, but by clearing away what no longer belongs. Most people do not realize how much of their stress is self-imposed. Not because they are choosing to be stressed, but because they have never paused long enough to examine what they are allowing into their life and why. They operate on autopilot. They say yes when they mean no. They absorb energy that is not theirs. They fill every quiet moment with noise because silence feels uncomfortable. They carry responsibilities that were never theirs to carry. And they wonder why they feel so heavy. The cost of unprotected peace is enormous. When you do not guard your mental and emotional space, everything gets in. Every opinion, every demand, every expectation, every crisis, every piece of news, every unresolved conflict, it all floods in and takes up residence in your mind. And over time, that flood becomes the norm. You forget what it feels like to think clearly. You forget what it feels like to wake up without dread. You forget what calm actually is because you have not experienced it in so long that it starts to feel like something other people have. Something that is not meant for you, but it is meant for you. Peace is not a luxury reserved for people with easy lives. Peace is a practice available to anyone willing to protect it. And the first step in protecting it is understanding what happens when you do not. When your peace is unprotected, you overcommit. You say yes to things you do not want to do, things that do not align with your values, things that drain your time and energy, because you are afraid of disappointing someone. You take on extra work, extra emotional labor, extra social obligations, not because you have the capacity for them, but because you have not given yourself permission to say no. And each time you overcommit, you are not just losing time, you are losing a piece of your mental clarity. You are adding weight to a load that is already too heavy. You are telling yourself, silently, that other people's expectations matter more than your own well-being. Overcommitment is one of the most common and most overlooked sources of stress. It does not feel like a crisis. It feels like responsibility. It feels like being a good person, a reliable person, a person who shows up. But there is a line between showing up for others and disappearing from yourself. And most people cross that line so often, they do not even know where it is anymore. When your peace is unprotected, you also experience emotional overload. You absorb other people's moods, anxieties, frustrations, and fears as if they are your own. Someone comes to you upset, and suddenly you are upset. Someone shares their worry, and now you are worried too. You carry the emotional weight of your family, your friends, your co-workers, sometimes even strangers on the internet, and you do it without ever stopping to ask whether any of that weight belongs to you. Empathy is a beautiful thing. The ability to feel what others feel is one of the most human qualities there is. But empathy without boundaries is self-destruction. When you absorb everything, you process nothing. When you carry everyone else's pain, you have no room left for your own healing. And when your emotional system is constantly overloaded, your body responds. You feel anxious without knowing why. You feel tired even when you have slept. You feel a tension in your chest, your shoulders, your jaw that never quite goes away. That is not just stress. That is the physical cost of carrying more than you were ever meant to hold. And then there are the distractions. The constant, relentless distractions that keep your mind from ever truly settling. Your phone buzzes and you check it immediately, not because the message is urgent, but because the habit is automatic. You scroll through feeds filled with opinions, arguments, highlight reels, and outrage, and you tell yourself you are just passing time. But you are not just passing time. You are filling your mind with noise. You are training your brain to need constant stimulation. You are making it harder and harder to sit with your own thoughts, to hear your own voice, to feel your own feelings without reaching for something to numb them. Distractions are not neutral. They are not harmless. Every piece of content you consume, every notification you respond to, every conversation you engage in that does not nourish you, takes up space. Mental space, emotional space, space that could be used for reflection, for creativity, for rest, for clarity. And when that space is constantly filled with noise, peace has nowhere to live. This is the cost of unprotected peace. It is not one big thing, it is 1,000 small things. It is the cumulative weight of everything you allow in without questioning whether it belongs. It is the slow erosion of your mental clarity, your emotional stability, your sense of self, caused not by tragedy but by tolerance. You tolerate too much. You allow too much. And you pay for it with your peace. But here is the hopeful part. If your peace has been disrupted by things you have allowed, then it can be restored by things you remove. You do not need to change the world. You do not need to fix everyone around you. You do not need to wait for your circumstances to improve. You simply need to start making different choices about what you let in and what you keep out. And that is exactly what we are going to do now. We are going to walk through the most common, most subtle, most deeply embedded sources of mental disturbance, the things that steal your peace so quietly you may not even realize they are doing it. And for each one, we are going to talk about how to recognize it, why it affects you, and what you can do to begin releasing its hold on your life. Let us start with something that affects almost everyone, though few people recognize it as a source of stress: the need for constant external validation. Think about the last time you made a decision and immediately looked to someone else for confirmation that it was the right one. Think about the last time you posted something online and felt a quiet anxiety, waiting to see how people would respond. Think about the last time you changed your opinion, your appearance, your behavior, or your plans because you were worried about what someone else might think. This is what living for external validation looks like. It is a constant, low-grade anxiety that hums beneath everything you do. It is the feeling that you are never quite enough on your own, that your worth depends on how others perceive you, that approval is something you must earn over and over again, every single day, and it is exhausting. When your sense of self is rooted in other people's opinions, you are never at peace. You cannot be. Because other people's opinions are unpredictable, inconsistent, and often have nothing to do with you. Someone might approve of you today and criticize you tomorrow, not because you changed, but because they did. Someone might admire you in one context and dismiss you in another. And if your inner stability depends on their response, then your inner stability is never stable. The need for validation often begins in childhood, Many of us grew up in environments where love felt conditional, where we learned that being good, being helpful, being agreeable, being impressive was the way to receive attention and affection. We learned to perform, to monitor how others were reacting to us, to adjust ourselves accordingly. And we carried those patterns into adulthood, where they became invisible but incredibly powerful. You might not even realize you are doing it. You might not see the way you soften your opinions around certain people, the way you over-explain your choices, the way you feel a knot in your stomach when someone does not respond the way you hoped. But it is there, and it is costing you. Every time you look outside yourself for confirmation that you are okay, you are giving your power away. You are telling yourself that your own judgment is not enough, that your own feelings are not trustworthy, that you need someone else to tell you who you are. Releasing this pattern does not happen overnight. It is a gradual process of learning to trust yourself, of making small decisions without consulting anyone, of sitting with the discomfort of not knowing whether everyone agrees with you, and realizing that you are still okay. It is the practice of asking yourself, before you seek someone else's opinion, what do I actually think? What do I actually want? And then honoring that answer, even if it feels unfamiliar. You do not need everyone to understand you. You do not need everyone to approve. You need to approve of yourself. And that approval must come from within, from a place of self-awareness and self-respect, not from the applause of others. When you stop performing for the world and start living for yourself, something remarkable happens. The noise gets quieter. The anxiety loosens its grip. And in the space where all that striving used to be, you begin to feel something you may not have felt in a long time. Peace. Now let us talk about something even more intimate, something that happens entirely inside your own mind, yet has the power to shape your entire emotional experience. The way you talk to yourself. Most people are not aware of how harsh their internal dialogue is. They would never speak to a friend the way they speak to themselves. They would never look at someone they love and say, "You are not good enough. You always mess things up. What is wrong with you? Why can you never get it right?" And yet they say these things to themselves dozens of times a day, so automatically that they do not even hear it anymore. Negative self-talk is one of the most destructive forces in your mental life. It is not just harmless thinking. It is a pattern that shapes your beliefs, your emotions, your behavior, and your sense of identity. When you repeatedly tell yourself that you are not enough, your brain begins to treat that as truth. It starts filtering your experiences through that lens. You notice every mistake and overlook every success. You interpret neutral situations as confirmation of your inadequacy. You shrink. You hesitate. You stop trusting yourself. And the stress this creates is immense. The voice of negative self-talk often sounds like your own voice, but it is not really you. It is a collection of messages you absorbed over time, from critical parents, from harsh teachers, from painful experiences, from a culture that profits from your insecurity. Those messages got embedded so deeply that they became automatic. They became the default soundtrack of your mind. And because they are internal, because no one else can hear them, they go unchallenged. But they can be challenged, and they must be if you want peace. The first step is simply noticing. Start paying attention to the way you speak to yourself when something goes wrong. Listen to the tone. Listen to the words. Would you say those things to someone you care about? If the answer is no, then why are you saying them to yourself? The second step is questioning. When you hear that inner critic say something harsh, pause and ask, is this actually true? Is this helpful? Is this the full picture? Or is it a distorted version of reality filtered through fear and insecurity? Most of the time, you will find that the voice is exaggerating, catastrophizing, or simply repeating old scripts that no longer apply. The third step is replacing. Not with forced positivity, not with affirmations that feel hollow, but with honesty. Instead of telling yourself you are a failure, try telling yourself the truth. That was hard. And I did not handle it the way I wanted to, but I am learning, and that is enough. Instead of telling yourself you are not good enough, try this. I am doing my best with what I have, and my best is allowed to look different on different days. This is not about pretending everything is fine. It is about refusing to be your own worst enemy. It is about creating an internal environment where growth is possible, where mistakes are survivable, where you can exist without constantly being under attack from the one person. You cannot escape yourself. When you change the way you speak to yourself, you change the way you experience your life. The same events, the same challenges, the same imperfections feel entirely different when they are met with compassion instead of cruelty. And in that shift, peace becomes possible. Not because your life is perfect, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. Let us move to something external now, something that surrounds you every day, but that you may have stopped noticing because it has become so familiar. Your environment. The spaces you occupy, the people you are around, the energy that fills the rooms where you spend your time, all of it affects you more than you realize. You might think that you can exist in a chaotic, negative, or toxic environment without being influenced by it, but you cannot. Human beings are deeply affected by their surroundings. We absorb the moods of the people around us. We internalize the energy of the spaces we inhabit. We are shaped, slowly and constantly, by what is normal in our environment. If you spend your time in spaces filled with conflict, criticism, gossip, and negativity, that becomes your baseline. Your nervous system adapts to it. Your expectations lower. Your tolerance for dysfunction increases, and your peace erodes, not in a sudden collapse, but in a slow, steady decline that you might not even notice until you step away and realize how heavy it all was. Toxic environments are not always obvious. Sometimes they are workplaces where passive aggression is the norm, where you feel unseen or undervalued, where the culture is one of constant pressure and zero appreciation. Sometimes they are social circles where competition masquerades as friendship, where people bond over complaining and criticizing others, where vulnerability is met with judgment rather than support. Sometimes they are even your own home, if the dynamics within it are characterized by tension, control, or emotional unpredictability. Recognizing a toxic environment requires honesty. It requires you to ask yourself how you feel when you are in that space, not how you think you should feel, not how others tell you it is, but how you actually feel. Do you feel lighter or heavier? Do you feel more like yourself or less? Do you feel safe to speak, to think, to breathe? Or do you feel like you are constantly managing, performing, protecting? Your answers matter. They are data. They are telling you something about what that environment is doing to your mental and emotional health. And while you may not always be able to leave a toxic environment immediately, you can begin to take steps to protect yourself within it. You can limit your exposure. You can create boundaries around your time and energy. You can seek out pockets of calm within the chaos. You can stop participating in the patterns that feed the toxicity, the gossip, the complaining, the overextending. And when possible, you can move toward environments that support the person you are trying to become. Spaces that are calm, people who are kind, situations that allow you to breathe. Because your environment is not just a backdrop, it is a force. And it is either working for your peace or against it. Now let us talk about something that has become so normalized in modern life that most people do not even question it anymore. The constant flood of noise and information. We live in an age of endless input. From the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep, there is something demanding your attention. News headlines designed to alarm you. Social media feeds designed to keep you scrolling. Notifications that interrupt your thoughts every few minutes. Podcasts, videos, articles, opinions, debates, arguments, all of it pouring into your mind in an unrelenting stream. And your brain was not designed for this. The human mind is remarkable, but it has limits. It can only process so much information before it becomes overwhelmed. And when it is overwhelmed, it does not function well. Your ability to think clearly decreases. Your ability to make decisions weakens. Your ability to regulate your emotions suffers. You become reactive instead of reflective. You become anxious without a clear cause. You feel mentally foggy, scattered, unable to focus, unable to rest, even when your body is still. This is not a personal failing. This is the natural result of overexposure. You are consuming more information in a single day than people 100 years ago consumed in a month. And most of that information is not useful. It is not nourishing. It is not making your life better. It is just noise. And noise, when it never stops, becomes a form of stress. Think about what you consume on a daily basis. How much of it do you actually need? How much of it adds value to your life? How much of it leaves you feeling informed, inspired, or empowered? And how much of it leaves you feeling anxious, angry, inadequate, or simply drained? If you are honest, you will probably find that the ratio is skewed heavily toward the latter. Most of what you take in is not serving you. It is just filling space. And that space has a cost. Protecting your peace means becoming intentional about your consumption. It means choosing what you let into your mind the same way you would choose what you put into your body. It means turning off notifications that are not essential. It means limiting your exposure to news and social media, not to be ignorant, but to be sane. It means creating pockets of silence in your day where your brain can rest, process, and recover. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is space. It is the space where your own thoughts can surface, where your intuition can speak, where your nervous system can settle. And in a world that is constantly trying to fill every moment with noise, choosing silence is one of the most powerful things you can do for your mental health. You do not need to know everything. You do not need to be reachable at every moment. You do not need to have an opinion about every issue. What you need is clarity, and clarity requires space. Space that you will only have if you are willing to turn down the volume on everything that is competing for your attention. Now let us turn to a pattern that many people recognize in themselves but struggle to change. The habit of pleasing others at the expense of yourself. People-pleasing is often mistaken for kindness. It looks like generosity. It looks like selflessness. It looks like being a good person. But underneath the surface, it is usually driven by fear, fear of rejection, fear of conflict, Fear of being seen as difficult or selfish. Fear that if you stop making everyone else comfortable, they will stop caring about you. And that fear creates a life built around other people's needs, other people's preferences, other people's comfort, while your own needs go unmet, unexpressed, and eventually unfelt. People pleasers often do not even know what they want anymore. They have spent so long adjusting to everyone else's expectations that they have lost touch with their own desires, their own opinions, their own sense of self. They say yes when they want to say no. They smile when they want to cry. They accommodate when they want to resist. And they do it so automatically that it does not even feel like a choice. It feels like who they are, but it is not who they are. It is a survival strategy, one that may have served a purpose at some point in their life, perhaps in a household where keeping the peace meant suppressing their own feelings, or in relationships where being agreeable was the price of love, but it is not serving them anymore. It is costing them. It is costing them their peace, their energy, their authenticity, and their self-respect. If you recognize yourself in this, I want you to hear something clearly. Being kind does not mean being endlessly available. Being a good person does not mean sacrificing yourself for everyone else's comfort. And saying no is not selfish. It is necessary. It is the foundation of every healthy relationship, every sustainable commitment, every authentic interaction. Without the ability to say no, your yes means nothing. It is not a gift. It is a compulsion. Learning to stop people pleasing is uncomfortable at first. It feels wrong. It triggers guilt. It might even trigger fear. The fear that people will be angry, that they will leave, that they will think less of you. But here is what you will discover. The people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries. They will not punish you for being honest. They will not leave because you said no. And the people who do react poorly to your boundaries, the people who only valued you when you were performing, accommodating, shrinking, those are the people whose approval was never worth the price you were paying. Reclaiming your peace means reclaiming your right to exist as a full person with needs, limits, and preferences that matter just as much as anyone else's. It means learning to tolerate the discomfort of disappointing someone in order to stop disappointing yourself. And it means understanding that the most generous thing you can do for the people in your life is to show up as someone who is whole, not as someone who has given every piece of themselves away. Let us shift now to something that many of us carry without realizing how much it weighs. The past. Not the past as a memory, not the past as a story you tell, but the past as an unresolved weight that sits in your chest, your stomach, your shoulders, and colors everything you experience in the present. Maybe it is a relationship that ended badly, and you still carry the hurt, the anger, the confusion, the sense of betrayal. Maybe it is a mistake you made years ago that you have never forgiven yourself for, a decision that altered your path, a moment you wish you could undo. Maybe it is something that was done to you, something painful, something unfair, something you did not deserve and never asked for, and the wound never fully healed because you never had the space or support to let it. Whatever it is, holding on to the past is one of the most common and most corrosive sources of stress. Not because the past does not matter. It does. Your experiences shaped you. They formed your beliefs, your fears, your patterns, your view of the world. But there is a difference between being shaped by your past and being trapped in it. When you hold on to pain that has already happened, you are not protecting yourself. You are reliving the hurt. Every time you replay a conversation that wounded you, you are wounding yourself again. Every time you rehearse what you should have said, what you should have done, you are keeping that moment alive in your body and in your mind, and your nervous system does not know the difference between a real threat and a remembered one. It responds the same way, with tension, with anxiety, with the feeling that something is wrong, even when, in the present moment, nothing is. Letting go of the past does not mean pretending it did not happen. It does not mean excusing anyone who hurt you. It does not mean forgetting. It means choosing to stop carrying the weight of something that is over. It means acknowledging the pain, honoring what it taught you, and then gently, firmly, setting it down. This is not easy. For some experiences, it may require support, a therapist, a counselor, a trusted guide who can help you process what you have been carrying alone. And there is no shame in that. Seeking help is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the recognition that some burdens are too heavy to set down without assistance. But whether you do it alone or with support, the process begins with a decision. The decision to stop letting yesterday steal today. The decision to stop punishing yourself for things you cannot change. The decision to stop waiting for an apology that may never come, and to give yourself the closure you need. You deserve to live in the present, fully, freely, without the constant shadow of what was. And when you begin to release the past, you will feel the difference immediately. Not as a dramatic transformation, but as a quiet unburdening, a lightness, a sense that the space inside you, the space that was filled with old pain, is finally open again, open for joy, open for growth, open for peace. Now let us talk about something that has become epidemic in the modern world, something that drives so much of our anxiety but disguises itself as ambition or awareness. The fear of missing out. It has a name now. It has become a cultural concept. But it is more than a catchy phrase. It is a deep, persistent anxiety that tells you that somewhere else, someone is living a better life than you. That you are falling behind. That you are not doing enough, seeing enough, achieving enough, experiencing enough. That the life you have, right here, right now, is somehow less than what it should be. This fear is amplified by technology. Every time you open a screen, you are presented with curated images of other people's lives, their vacations, their bodies, their relationships, their successes, their possessions. And your brain, which is designed to compare, immediately starts measuring your reality against their highlight reel. The result is a constant, nagging sense of inadequacy, a feeling that you are missing something, that you need to do more, be more, have more. But here is what this fear never tells you. What you see is not the full picture. The people whose lives look perfect are struggling in ways you cannot see. The opportunities you think you are missing would often come with costs you have not considered. The pace that looks impressive from the outside often feels unsustainable from the inside. And the life you are living, the one that feels ordinary and unremarkable, may contain more peace, more meaning, more richness than you are currently able to see, because you are too busy looking at what everyone else has. The fear of missing out is really the fear of not being enough. It is the belief that your life, as it is insufficient, that you need to constantly add, accumulate, and achieve in order to justify your existence. And this belief is not only false, it is the enemy of peace. Peace requires presence. It requires you to be here, in this moment, in this life, without constantly wishing you were somewhere else. It requires you to look at what you have, not with complacency, but with gratitude. Not with the delusion that everything is perfect, but with the recognition that what you have is real, and what you see on a screen is not. Releasing the fear of missing out begins with a simple but radical shift. You stop comparing, not because comparison is always bad, but because the comparisons you are making are distorted. You are comparing your full, complicated, behind-the-scenes reality with someone else's carefully edited presentation, and that comparison will always leave you feeling less than. Instead, you begin to ask different questions. Not what am I missing, but what do I already have that I have been overlooking? Not what is everyone else doing, but what actually matters to me. Not how can I keep up, but what pace feels sustainable and healthy for my life. When you stop chasing what others have and start honoring what you need, the anxiety loosens, the urgency fades, and you discover something surprising. You are not behind. You are not missing out. You are right where you need to be, and that is enough. Now let us talk about boundaries, not as a concept, not as a buzzword, but as a practice, a daily, ongoing, sometimes uncomfortable practice that is absolutely essential for your peace. Boundaries are the lines you draw around your time, your energy, your emotions, and your space that tell the world what is acceptable and what is not. They are the invisible architecture of a healthy life, and without them, everything falls apart. Most people struggle with boundaries for one of two reasons. Either they were never taught that they were allowed to have them, or they have been made to feel guilty for enforcing them. In many families, many cultures, many social environments, boundaries are treated as rudeness, as selfishness, as a failure to be generous or loving, and so people learn to go without them. They let others cross lines that should be firm. They allow behavior that causes them pain. They give access to people who do not handle it with care, and they suffer in silence because they believe that suffering is the price of being a good person. It is not. Suffering is the price of having no boundaries, and being a good person does not require you to be an unprotected one. A boundary is not an attack. It is not a rejection. It is not a punishment. A boundary is simply a statement of what you need in order to function, to feel safe, to maintain your health, to preserve your peace. And anyone who cannot respect that statement is showing you exactly why the boundary was necessary in the first place. Boundaries can be about time. I am not available after this hour. I need this evening to myself. I cannot take on any more commitments right now. Boundaries can be about energy. I am not able to have this conversation today. I need to step away from this situation. I do not have the emotional capacity for this right now. Boundaries can be about behavior. I will not tolerate being spoken to that way. I need you to respect my decision. I am not willing to continue this pattern. Setting boundaries is not about controlling others. It is about protecting yourself. It is about recognizing that your energy is finite, your emotional reserves are not unlimited, and that you have the right, the fundamental human right, to decide how your resources are spent. And here is what most people discover when they start setting boundaries. The world does not end. The people who truly love you do not leave. In fact, many of your relationships improve because they are no longer built on resentment and exhaustion. They are built on honesty, on mutual respect, on the understanding that two people can care about each other and still have limits. The relationships that do not survive your boundaries were surviving on your silence. And those relationships were not giving you peace. They were taking it. Start small if you need to. Start with one boundary, one conversation, one decision to protect your space, and notice how it feels. Not the initial discomfort, that is normal, but the relief that comes after. The quiet sense that you are finally taking care of yourself. That is not selfishness. That is survival. That is peace. Let us now address something that many of you will recognize immediately, because it may be the thing you struggle with most. Overthinking. The relentless, circular, exhausting process of turning every thought over and over in your mind until it loses all meaning and becomes pure anxiety. You know the feeling. You lie awake at night replaying a conversation, analyzing every word, wondering what they meant, wondering what you should have said, wondering if you somehow ruined everything. You face a decision, and instead of making it, you spiral into every possible outcome, every worst-case scenario, every potential regret, until you are so overwhelmed that you make no decision at all. You take a small problem and think about it so much that it becomes a catastrophe in your mind, even though nothing has actually changed in reality. Overthinking is not the same as being thoughtful. Thoughtfulness is productive. It leads to insight, understanding, and clarity. Overthinking is the opposite. It leads nowhere. It is a loop, a mental treadmill that generates enormous effort but zero progress. And it is one of the most common sources of anxiety, insomnia, and emotional exhaustion. The reason overthinking is so hard to stop is that it feels productive. It feels like you are working on the problem. It feels like if you just think about it a little more, you will find the answer. But you will not. Because overthinking is not actually about solving problems. It is about trying to control uncertainty, and uncertainty, by its very nature, cannot be controlled. Much of what you overthink is either in the past, which you cannot change, or in the future, which you cannot predict. You are spending your mental energy on things that are either already done, or have not happened yet. And in doing so, you are missing the one thing you actually have. The present, the now, the moment right in front of you that does not require analysis, interpretation, or worry. It just requires your presence. Breaking the cycle of overthinking begins with awareness. You notice when you are doing it. You catch yourself in the loop and you name it. This is overthinking. This is not productive. This is not helping me. That awareness alone is powerful because it creates a space between you and the thought. You are not the thought. You are the one observing it. And from that place of observation, you have a choice. You can choose to redirect your attention. Not by forcing yourself to think about something positive, but by anchoring yourself in something real. Your breath, your body, the physical sensation of where you are right now, the sound of your own exhale, the feeling of your feet on the ground. These are not distractions. They are anchors. They bring you back to the present, where the problem your mind has been spinning about often does not actually exist. You can also set limits on your thinking. Give yourself permission to think about a problem for a set period of time, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then consciously move on. Write your thoughts down if that helps. Getting them out of your head and onto paper often reveals how repetitive and circular they actually are. And once they are on paper, you can see them more clearly. You can address what is real and release what is imagined. Overthinking will not disappear overnight. It is a deeply ingrained habit. But every time you catch it, name it, and redirect, you weaken its grip. You teach your brain, that it does not need to solve everything right now, that some things can wait, that some things do not need to be solved at all. And in the quiet that follows, you will find something you may not have felt in a long time: rest. Real, mental rest. The kind of rest that no amount of sleep can provide when your mind refuses to stop. There is one final pattern we need to talk about, and it may be the most important one, because it is the one that underlies so many of the others. Ignoring your own needs, not your wants, not your luxuries, your needs, the fundamental things you require to function, to feel well, to be human. Rest, nourishment, emotional support, physical movement, creative expression, solitude, connection, joy. Most people know on some level what they need. They know when they are tired. They know when they are hungry. They know when they are lonely, overwhelmed, understimulated, or burned out. But instead of responding to those signals, they override them. They push through. They tell themselves they do not have time. They tell themselves other things are more important. They put everyone else's needs first and treat their own as optional. And then they wonder why they feel so empty. Ignoring your own needs is not noble. It is not strength. It is a form of self-abandonment, and over time, it creates a deep internal disconnection. You stop hearing your own signals because you have trained yourself to ignore them. You stop knowing what you need because you never let yourself have it. You become a stranger to yourself. And living as a stranger to yourself is one of the loneliest, most exhausting experiences there is. Your needs are not selfish. They are essential. They are the foundation upon which everything else is built. When you are rested, you think more clearly. When you are nourished, you have more energy. When you are emotionally supported, you have more to give. When you allow yourself joy, you have more resilience in the face of difficulty. Meeting your own needs does not take away from anyone else. It makes you more present, more capable, more compassionate, more available for the people and things that matter to you. Start by listening, just listening. When your body says it is tired, hear it. When your mind says it needs quiet, honor it. When your heart says it needs connection, seek it. When your spirit says it needs beauty, play, rest, or creation, let it have that. You do not have to overhaul your life. You do not have to become someone entirely different. You simply have to stop treating yourself as the least important person in your own life. You matter. Your needs matter. And meeting them is not a reward for finishing everything else. It is the thing that makes everything else possible. When you take care of yourself, not as an afterthought, but as a priority, you will notice something shifting. The resentment you feel toward others will begin to fade, because you are no longer sacrificing yourself for them. The exhaustion you carry will begin to lift, because you are finally giving yourself what you need. The anxiety that hums beneath everything will begin to quiet, because you are no longer running on empty, hoping that somehow you will be enough despite having nothing left to give. You will be enough. Not because you have achieved enough or given enough or pleased enough people, but because you have finally learned to be enough for yourself. Now I want to tell you a story. It is not about anyone famous. It is not about a dramatic transformation. It is about someone ordinary, someone who might remind you of yourself. Her name was Claire, and for most of her adult life, Claire felt like she was drowning, even though on the surface, everything looked fine. She had a job, a family, friends, a home. She was busy, productive, always moving, always doing, always available. People described her as reliable, as strong, as the person you could always count on. And Claire wore those descriptions like armor, even though underneath them, she was falling apart. Claire said yes to everything. Every favor, every committee, every invitation, every request. She was the first one to volunteer and the last one to leave. She answered texts at midnight. She took on her co-workers' projects when they fell behind. She mediated her family's conflicts and absorbed everyone's stress as if it were her responsibility to carry. She checked her phone constantly, scrolling through news that made her anxious and social media that made her feel inadequate. She compared herself to everyone. She mentally replayed every conversation, searching for signs that she had said the wrong thing, that someone was upset with her, that she was failing in some invisible way. She never rested. Not really. Even when she was sitting still, her mind was racing, planning, worrying, analyzing, anticipating. She could not remember the last time she felt truly calm. Calm was a concept she associated with other people, people who had easier lives, fewer responsibilities, more help. Not her life. And then one day, her body made the decision her mind refused to make. She collapsed. Not dramatically, not in a way that required an ambulance, but in a way that could not be ignored. She sat down at her kitchen table one morning and could not get up. Her body was done. It had been sending her signals for months, maybe years: tension headaches, stomach pain, insomnia, a racing heart, and she had ignored every single one. Now it was refusing to be ignored any longer. The doctor told her what she already knew, but had been too afraid to admit. She was burned out, not just tired, burned out, depleted in every way a person can be depleted. Physically, emotionally, mentally. The doctor told her she needed to rest. But more than that, she needed to change something. Because rest without change would only give her enough energy to go back to the same patterns that broke her down in the first place. Claire did not change overnight. The process was slow, messy, and uncomfortable. She started by doing the smallest, most frightening thing she could imagine. She said no to a committee she had been on for 3 years, but never enjoyed. The guilt was immediate and intense. She felt like she was letting people down. She almost called back to reverse her decision, but she did not. She sat with the discomfort. And a day later, the discomfort faded, and in its place was something she almost did not recognize: relief. That small no opened a door. She started looking at her life with new eyes. She examined her relationships and noticed which ones left her energized and which ones left her empty. She looked at her habits and saw how much of her time was spent on consumption that added nothing to her life: scrolling, watching, absorbing noise that did nothing but agitate her mind. She began to notice her self-talk, the constant inner narration that told her she was not doing enough, not being enough, not worthy of rest. She started setting boundaries, small ones at first. Not answering her phone after 9 at night. Telling her sister that she loved her, but could not mediate another argument. Leaving a social gathering early because she was tired, without making an excuse, without apologizing. Each boundary felt like a risk. Each one got a little easier. She began to address the past, the things she had been carrying for years without examining. A painful breakup she had never processed. Criticism from a parent that still echoed in her mind. A mistake she had made in her 20s that she had never forgiven herself for. She started working with a therapist, not because she was broken, but because she was tired of carrying weight she could not set down alone. Slowly, over weeks and months, Claire's life began to look different. not because her circumstances changed dramatically, but because she did. She was quieter, not withdrawn, but intentional. She spoke less but meant more. She did less but felt more present. She stopped trying to be everything to everyone and started being something to herself. The people who loved her adjusted. Some of them struggled with the new Claire. They were used to her being endlessly available, and the shift was uncomfortable. But the ones who truly cared came to understand that the woman who was saying no to some things was finally saying yes to herself. And the ones who could not accept that, the ones who wanted the old Claire back, the one who gave everything and asked for nothing, those relationships faded. And Claire mourned them, but she did not chase them. One evening, about 6 months into this process, Claire was sitting on her back porch. The sun was setting. There was no sound but the birds and the breeze. Her phone was inside. Her mind was quiet, and she realized, with a kind of stunned clarity, that she felt at peace. Not happy, exactly, not excited, not anything dramatic, just peaceful, still, settled. She could not remember the last time she had felt that way, and she understood. In that moment, that peace had not arrived because something wonderful had happened. Peace had arrived because she had finally stopped allowing everything that was taking it away. That is the truth about peace. It is not something you wait for. It is not something you earn after a lifetime of struggle. It is not a destination you reach when everything in your life falls perfectly into place. Peace is what is left when you stop tolerating what disturbs it. It is what emerges when you create space for it. It is what you feel when you finally, bravely, lovingly choose yourself. And that is what I want to leave you with. You have been carrying so much. Things that are not yours to carry. Weight that was placed on you by others, by culture, by old patterns, by fear. And you have been carrying it for so long that you may have forgotten what it feels like to put it down. But you can put it down. Not all at once, not perfectly, not without discomfort, but you can begin, one thought at a time, one boundary at a time, one choice at a time. You can choose to stop seeking approval from people who will never be satisfied. You can choose to speak to yourself with the same kindness you offer others. You can choose to distance yourself from environments that drain you and move toward ones that nourish you. You can choose to turn down the noise, to stop performing for the world, to release the past, to stop chasing what everyone else has, to set boundaries that protect your energy, to interrupt the spiral of overthinking, to honor your own needs as if they matter, because they do. Every time you remove something that drains you, you create space. And in that space, something grows, not something you have to force, not something you have to manufacture, something natural, organic, and real. Clarity, calm, a sense of self that does not depend on anyone else's approval or validation. Peace is not built by accident. It is built by what you choose to allow and what you choose to let go. It is built by the boundaries you set, the noise you refuse, the patterns you interrupt, the courage you find to say this is enough. You do not need a different life. You need a different relationship with the life you have. One based on awareness, not autopilot. One based on intention, not obligation. One based on the revolutionary understanding that you are allowed to protect your peace. That it is not selfish to take care of yourself. That it is not weak to have limits. That it is not cold to walk away from what hurts you. That it is, in fact, the bravest and most loving thing you can do. So as you move forward from here, carry this with you. not as a rule to follow but as a truth to remember. You do not find peace, you protect it. You clear the space for it. You guard it gently and fiercely, the way you would guard anything precious, anything sacred, anything that makes life worth living. Because peace is not a place you arrive at. It is a way you choose to live. One moment, one boundary, one honest choice at a time, and you are ready. You have always been ready. You just needed permission to begin.